Well, hello and welcome to our Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A on Wednesday. I'm Dave McCormick here from Alpha Software, and I am pleased to be joined by Dion McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha. Today we will be covering, I believe, the last part of working with the new control bar builder. Which I think you'll find very interesting. We'll also be taking your questions at the end, so go ahead and type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar interface. These are questions that make these sessions interesting, lively, and informative to other people. So let's begin. Dan, I'm going to go ahead and take you off mute. Hello, Dan, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter.
Excellent.
And you should see a dialog box.
Yeah, good to go. Well, thank you, everybody. Hey, thank you, Dave. And welcome to 2017, first webinar of the year. We'll end our items from last year and get prepped for the next year. It's going to be a very, very busy year. I don't know if everybody senses it, but there's going to be a lot of business this year and a lot of really cool stuff coming down the road from Alpha in terms of new features, capabilities, and whole new sets of abilities that just are phenomenal. It's really, really exciting, and you're going to see a lot of the component pieces come together into a holistic situation over this next year. I'm very, very excited about what our development team is working on, and it's going to be fabuloso. With that, as Dave mentioned, please, we're here for you. Take a few moments to go to the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel and put your questions in there. We love your questions. We get them to guides at Alpha Software. Helps us build the content we deliver here. But also more and more important is that we want to answer any and all of your questions so you can move forward and continue to develop at a speedy pace. Today what we're going to do is really wrap up the control bar concept. We've gone through the basics of control parts, layouts, etc. But most importantly, we're going to talk about a very powerful capability called disclosures. And I want to kind of mention that and spend a little bit of time on that because it really dramatically reduces the complexity of your application. And more importantly, there's a lot of built-in functionality you can take advantage of almost immediately. There will be sort of the basics I'll go over today, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do a little bit more research in the other. And I'll be putting some links that has some more information on how to get more information on how to use disclosures. Before that, I want to mention to everybody, and I'm over here, let me go do something right here. We have coming up at the September timeframe, which to be honest is almost like next month. It's amazing how fast the time goes. But we are going to be having our DevCon 2017. Right now we have some incredible deals on sort of early bird registration. You can lock down there a great deal. Thus it won't cost you much to go to the event and get all the valuable aspects of it. But if we go to alphasoftware.com.devcon 2017, that's DEVCON 2017, gives you all the details, and I'm sorry, in the October, not September timeframe. And along with that, it talks about the training, the contest, all this. You can register and get access. Go check that out. I think you'll really find it a really good deal, and it's going to be a real fun event. We have some amazing things planned for that event. I think you're going to really enjoy it, including some very powerful pre-conference training that we're putting together and we'll have online ready to go for you. So with that, what I'd like to go ahead and do is, while you're typing away those questions in our questions area, I want to go ahead and talk about our discussion for today, which is really the wrap-up for control bars. And the control bars, you can see, has an enormous amount of power in terms of multiple layouts and icons and buttons and actions and a lot of exciting things here. But we took it one step further. And what disclosures allow you to do is something that we use a lot within our apps, or need to use in our apps, especially phone apps with very limited screen real estate. And that's the idea of putting up messages. So think of them as dialog boxes to either tell people that something's going on and they should wait, to confirm something, or more importantly, is to actually do a confirm and cancel. And this principle is called a disclosure. So what you're doing is disclosing some information in an overlay pattern and there's many different ways you can set it up there. Now you can extend this beyond that to many different ways. You can actually create pop-up disclosure forms. So you can actually have a form that pops up, say a settings panel or something along those lines that you fill out. You could also use these to overlay other content. So for instance, you'll see on the right-hand side, there's a little weight because it's doing something like maybe contacting the server to update some data or doing something along those lines. So the disclosure concept, and I'm going to focus today on the pre-built ones, but don't limit yourself. You can build full-blown forms and other capabilities within the tool and be able to do that from there. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So let's go ahead and dig in. I'm going to go ahead and go into my alpha development environment, and for people who are newer, I'm in the alpha development environment. I've gone ahead and already created a UX component, and a UX component is our core form component. And you'll notice that I have gone ahead and pre-selected, and let me go ahead and show you which one I did, a template that I like to use. This is my go-to one now, which is the Mobile App Framework Panel Navigator with tab buttons using control bars. And that's a real good starter because you can just sort of like get rid of the stuff you don't need, and allows you to put it together very, very quickly. So I've gone ahead and selected and created a new one here. Oops, did I do that? Let's go ahead and do that. I'm sorry, I meant to do that. I just renamed the old one, so you'll see me doing that. And we'll go ahead and select this here. Okay. So you'll see we're here. And so you have a control bar, and actually I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to go ahead and do a working preview. And you'll see that we already have a pre-made setup where we have a control bar at top and a control bar at bottom. You'll notice my colors a little differently because I set up in this project, I'm using a different color scheme. Normally this is black, but you'll see, and I can click on buttons in here. So there's one control bar at top and one at the bottom. And we're going to focus mainly on the top one here from there. So you'll see in our panel navigator, we have a header area with control bar and a footer area with control bar. So right now, already built into this control bar is some immediate functionality. Specifically, you'll see it's showing some text. It's also got a menu with a set of menu items. If you click on a menu item, it does a little JavaScript, throws up an alert that's easy to work on that from that standpoint there. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about disclosures. Now, one of the coolest things is that first and foremost, all this information is available right here with the user guide documentation. So, you know, to kind of, for follow-on, make sure you go in here on the home page after you've opened up the control bar, and you can click on this user guide documentation, and it's a very extensive set of ones. And then also along with that is you're able to see some videos that have been put together that go through these items a little bit in more detail. But you'll notice I have an immediate control bar that already has that HTML with the message at top, a menu, and some menu items. So there's some pre-built content here, and you'll see we have basically a layout which you've seen at the top of the screen with your menu here and your text here. Plus we have this thing called the menu layout, which is actually how I build that pop-up menu. That's another layout. And then on the layout itself, I reference that menu item from there. What I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and add in my disclosures. Now, there's a manual methodology where you go through disclosures and set up some JavaScript and some other things. They're a little bit more advanced, thus I've left that to be the final topic in terms of control bars. But Alpha, actually, the development team said, hey, let's make it easier for people. So if you click on the home button, and you'll notice at the bottom here, excuse me, we have import messaging functions. And the idea behind it, and I'll show you, is that if we click on here, we already have pre-made sort of components and pieces that you can add to your user interface. So you have the wait message, the basic message, and the confirm message. So I can go ahead and say, click OK, add messaging items to my control bar definition. And when I do this, by the way, you can also copy them to your clipboard if you want to kind of save it there, just click there. And it says the messaging functions were added to the control bar definition. So what's happened is that if I go to data, it's added some new data items. It's actually added some new items here. it's also most importantly added some JavaScript. I think it was on here. Wait. In the actions there. Oh, and those pieces there. And some CSS and some other pieces there. So now we have our basic pieces in here. So really important is that you go to import messaging functions, click on that, and they'll add that to our item from here. So now what we can do is I want to create a button. And remember, if I click on here, it also shows you we have wait message, basic message, and confirm message. So let's start with this center one here called basic message one button. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my items here. And remember, items are sort of my key, like buttons and other things. So I'm going to go ahead and click add control bar. And I'm just going to call this button basic. And it's going to be a button control. And this is what we've covered before. Now, this button right now is now in my system so I can add my layout. But right now it doesn't do anything because I haven't defined a click event. The click event is when the person clicks on this button, it's going to perform that. So we actually need to, as we talked about before, create an action that's going to be associated with this item. And then through that action, we can then display the confirmation message. So I'm going to go to Actions, and I'm going to go ahead and click Add Action. And I'm just going to call it the basic button basic. So I'm going to call the action the same thing as my button because it's one-to-one. As practice, you probably want to come up with some good naming convention that explains what that action does, because it may be associated with multiple items. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one relationship. But for now, we'll keep it simple. So right here, I would then insert the code that would display my pop-up message box or my disclosure. Now, I could go ahead and copy and paste it in from sample documentation, but you'll notice down below here we have this Code Genie. And so we can click on Code Genie, and you see we have some nice ones here. Generate code to show a disclosure. That's a little more advanced. We have Xcode code in another action, so you can actually tell one action to call another action. But this last one's the more powerful one we want to talk about today, which is display a message. So again, I've gone to action. I created my new action. I've gone to Code Genie here, and I've clicked display a message. Now this brings up a pop-up menu and a little genie. And you'll see I have either a wait message, a basic message, or confirm message. So the one I want is this middle one, the basic message. So I'm going to click there and select there. So that tells it, okay, this little Code Genie, generate the code to display that message. Now, you can see I can immediately go in here and change what the title of that message is. And again, if you're curious, you have a title area, then some body message, and then the button itself. So I'm going to leave it all the plain. And then also, by the way, I could add in my JavaScript that I actually, when the person clicks OK, it will execute that Java. And I'll come back to that in a few moments here. But I'm going to just leave this as it is, and I'm going to say click OK. Great. So you'll see this is my message. This is automatically created the code to show a basic message with a certain title, a body, OK, and the function. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. So I click OK, and I'm going to paste. And so now I have my item here, button basic. Using the Code Genie, I've created the little piece of JavaScript. Now the nice thing is once you kind of get to feel for this, you can just copy and paste it. You don't have to do the Code Genie every time, but it's great to start out with and to see what's going on. In fact, let me change this real quick. Let me just go Code Genie, display a message. I'm going to select basic as I did before, but in the button JavaScript, what I want to do is I want to say alert hello. So when they click that OK button in the middle, I want to throw this little JavaScript. And if you click OK, this could trigger synchronization and could do a bunch of different things from there. So now you'll notice that it's generated the code to show the message and also run this little piece of JavaScript. So I'll copy that to the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it here. Okay. So now I have my item, my button, so I'm going to link them together. I'm going to go to my items here, button basic. On the click event, I want to run the button basic I just created there. And last but not least is that I've got my button, I've got my action, I've linked them together, but now I'm going to go to my layout. I'm going to go to my layout number 1, which is always displayed, or the first one that's displayed. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this by double-clicking on it. And then over here in the after, I'm going to go ahead and add my new button in here into it so it displays right here. So I'm going to click OK. So you'll notice now I have that button. Oh, that's kind of ugly. So let's go back to my item real quick. And instead of saying, it'll say show basic. Now if we go back to our layout, instead of saying button, it's going to do that. I can refresh that. There we go. You'll notice show basic there. Okay, step 1, create my item. Step 2, create my action. Use the Code Genie to create the message type I want. Step 3, link the action to the item. And step 4, add the item to the control layout and click OK. Go ahead and save this. And now let's go into working preview and check it out. So you'll see now that we've adjusted it. When it displays it, we now have our little show basic, and that might be an icon, something a little prettier. When I click on there, you'll notice, hey, check it out. This cool little message box pops up. And this could be changed. You know, I use the default values, but this could be more informative. Like, so do you really want to synchronize? Do you really want to do X, Y, Z? Okay. Or just a confirmation saying, hey, everything you asked me to do is done. I want to show you this little message, and you say OK. Now notice what happens when I click the OK. The message box went away, and that little piece of JavaScript, in this case a simple alert, was put in here that said OK. So for instance, you could say OK and then execute some more JavaScript. Now that doesn't make a lot of sense. Usually that kind of message box is like, hey, I just did something, want to let you know. Click OK and you're out of here. So let's go ahead and go to the next one, a little bit more value here. So you'll see we're in here, so we're going to go back in design. We're going to follow along and do the same process we did before, but I'll do it a little quicker since we're doing it from there. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my control bar. And when that's open, I'm going to go to my items. I'm going to add a new control bar item, and I'm going to call that button advanced. And it's of type button here. So, and I'm going to scroll down here and just say advanced is the text that's shown. So we have our button, advanced, ready to go. Now you'll notice we don't have any click event and we don't even have an action, so let's go to our actions. Let's add a new action that's going to be triggered by that button. Click add action. We'll go button advanced. Click OK. So we have an empty action, nothing's going to happen yet. So I'm going to use my Code Genie we talked about a few minutes ago. And I'm going to click here, display a message. Now instead of basic, what I want to do is, I want to do a confirm message. I'm calling it advanced, but it's called confirmation, where I have basically some information and then a OK cancel capability. So I'm going to click OK. And so it's very similar to what you saw before when we did basic. You have this title. But you'll notice now down here, you have two different JavaScripts that can run. So this is going to give you the opportunity to either click OK or cancel. And based on that, you can either run a JavaScript for each of those or do nothing. Like for instance, cancel, you can just do nothing and it closes the window. But let's go ahead and change that real quick while I'm here. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go to OK button JavaScript. I'm going to click on this ellipsis button. And I'm just going to say, alert, you said OK. Got it. So now what I want to do is, oh, what did I do here? You said, oh,
colon instead of semicolon.
Oh, semicolon.
Catch every time.
I know. So picky, God. Okay, the next is, and then here we would just do the same thing where we say, you, did I say you said or you? Oh, I'll just go click cancel. And now we'll do the semicolon. Okay, click OK. You'll notice now it's a little bit more advanced, so I'm going to copy this clip to the clipboard. I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here. So now what happens when I click, or when this action is run, it's going to give this, and then if the function for OK is hit, it will run this one if it's there. So now that we have created our item action, we have to tie those together so that when I click on the item, it triggers the right action. So I'm going to go to button advanced. I'm going to go to the click event for button advanced. Click button advanced, click OK. Now the last step is I'm going to go to my control bar layout. I'm going to go and edit this. I'm going to go ahead and remove my button basic, and I'm going to add in now my button advanced. So I'm basically replacing that there. But think of that. That could be a menu, and where you have a different menu of different items from there. So now we have our little word advanced there. So I'm going to click OK, click Save, go into Working Preview. And when I click Advanced, you'll notice that I have, again, a very nice looking pop-up message with a title in there. And I've got two buttons I can click, either OK or Cancel. So I'm going to click Cancel first. You'll see it closed the window and it ran that little alert I put in there. I'm going to do it once more, and now instead of cancel, I'm going to click OK, and it said OK. So very valuable when you want to get some kind of positive confirmation from the person before an action is taken. Like, do you really want to synchronize? Do you really want to delete this record? Do you really want to do X, Y, Z? You can do that. And it's a modal dialogue, so it's really nice from that standpoint. And then based upon what their selection is, you can either not do anything, don't even put JavaScript in there, or run the JavaScript, and it will run that action from that standpoint there. Okay, so let's do our last one real quick. I'll go through this even quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and go first step, item, create a new one. I'm going to go button, wait. And then I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here and say, wait. I'm going to go to my actions. I'm going to create a new action called button wait. Going to use our handy dandy Code Genie. So I'm going to display a message. In this case, I want to click on the message type and select wait message. And then you'll notice I have a title in there. You'll notice we have auto close over a specified interval. I'm going to go ahead and use that so it just doesn't sit up on the screen forever. There is a command that, once something's done, it can tell it to shut down and close that window. But I'm just going to say maybe let's do 3,000, which is about 3 seconds or so. So I've selected wait. I'm going to auto close it after a certain interval, and there. So, for instance, useful if the AJAX callback would normally close the way message fails. So this is very valuable that you could even have it automatically closed by having, like, let's say you're doing a sync, and at the very end of the sync you want it to come back and close this window. That's going to be done through an AJAX, but who knows, it might fail for any number of reasons. You may have a situation, so you may not want to just sit that thing up there forever. So you may want to have an auto close that even after so many, the worst case scenario, it's going to close that window so they have a normal environment to work in. Okay, you'll notice that it's automatically generated my code here, so I can copy that code to the clipboard. I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to go back to my items, go to my button wait, go to my click event, select button wait, go back to the control bar layout, open up my first row here, remove my advanced button, add my new button wait there, and I'm good to go. Step 1, item. Step 2, action. Step 3, combine them. Step 4, put them on layout, and you're ready to rock and roll. And so I'm going to do this in working preview because it uses a little nice animation, and I didn't have it working on working, so we'll go to live preview and make sure it shows there. So now we have the same control bar layout except for a new button, which will be shown right here. I'm going to click wait, and you'll notice a very nice pop-up button, or a pop-up comes up, has this nice little animation there to tell the user something's going on, and then you'll notice since I set up the auto close, it automatically closes that. If I don't say auto close, it would just sit up there for as long as it wants to run. And so you can use a combination of that and your own commands to close the window for long, say, time items from that standpoint there. So this is the best way to get into disclosures. Now, to kind of finish up our discussion here, this just scratches the surface of a disclosure. You'll notice we have a whole tab here, and a disclosure is basically almost like a mini form, and you can create layouts where you can have fields and other pieces there. So you can create whole data entry forms with disclosures. You could create settings panels, many different kind of normal kind of pieces there. And it's a little bit more advanced just because you're laying it out with HTML. But what's really exciting is that Alpha is actually, just in the latest release, added some little tools to help you build these forms much, much easier. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send, in a few moments, we're going to put some links to this more data about disclosures and how they work and how you can put them together on your own. But I want to do a real quick recap. First and foremost is that we have some pre-built disclosures. And this is your great way to kind of get your feet wet, kind of see what the JavaScript is, how it's kind of set up. We have the basic message, the confirm message, and the wait message. The confirm message is, okay, cancel, the basic's okay, and the wait message there. These are predefined. The most important thing you have to make sure you do is import the messaging functions, because that important. I wonder if, yeah, what that does, and it didn't show before, is after you run import messaging functions, it adds this little CSS in here that's used to make those nice looking forms. It also has added some JavaScript. I don't see that there. No, that's okay. It added some JavaScript in there. Cancel and confirm. I'll double check on that in a few moments, but there we are in this object. It was a JavaScript defined for this and this object. You'll see that it actually has added some little pieces of JavaScript here for those different types of things, saying show basic, this. And so you need to make sure before these, you can start using that Code Genie, you have to make sure to import the messaging functions. Once you've done that once, you can define as many items, as many actions as you want, and they'll work good. But it's important because when you click that button, it includes the CSS and the JavaScript that kind of make everything work from that standpoint there. So so now that you have that set up, once that's in there, your first step is to create an action. I'm sorry, an item, a button, or a piece of text. Create your actions, and when you create your actions, you use the Code Genie display a message. You then select which message you would like to do, and it's going to write the code for you and allow you to adjust it in terms of what you want to see, and then you just paste that code right in here, and you're good to go. Connect that action to confirm, and then once you have that, you put it on your control bar, and now you are available and ready to go. And again, in a few moments, we'll send out some extra links that will actually show you how you can create your own disclosures, and then you have infinite flexibility of making them look like what we have, or anything you have to do. You can make very complex ones. You know, an example of a good disclosure is like a settings panel, like where you want to pop up and have the person enter in, say, settings for the app. You know, you could go to a panel card and do that, but it's slick. It looks really nice, and it kind of designates that, hey, this is kind of a system level information from there. So what I'm going to do now, Dave, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn it back to you for a second here. I have to step away to the desk 1 minute and then be right back. If you don't mind, if you could show them that search technique, and while you're doing that, I'll also collect the links and put them into our GoToWebinar control panel, so they have the links for the different other pieces on disclosure. Is that okay?
Sounds good. We're standing by.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and so if you don't mind showing your screen and showing them that
I actually don't
search
have
trick.
I don't actually have that search trick. I'm trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get it out and I'll send it to you. Wait, let me get it up here. I want to make sure this is good. Okay. Bear with me. There we go. Okay. There's the search tip. Wait up, I'm bringing it up here. Okay, I'm sending it over to you here. I'm sorry, everybody. Should have this.
Happening all behind the scenes. All kinds of
Yeah, right.
There we go. Great. Cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll share my screen.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'll be back in 1 minute.
So, just a quick recap. Our documentation person is beginning to add some cool new features to our help system. Let me go ahead and share my screen so I can show you what I'm talking about. Okay. Just 1 moment. And let me just put this here. Okay. And we'll do share screen. I gotta make myself the presenter. And I'm gonna just show my screen. All right, hopefully you guys can see this, but if you take a look right up in here, we're gonna start adding some advanced things to the search box. This is could be very useful for you. In this case, for example, you could, if you're looking for the word disclosure, you can actually say in title disclosure. There'll be some other things here as well. There'll also be I believe a pop-up box that'll allow you to do some more advanced type searching. So if you've been to certainly Google, if you've used the advanced searches of Google where you're allowed to say specify, does it happen in this domain name or is it in this language and all that, we're going to start adding that to our documentation system. Just a quick update on that. Actually, let me send you out the link. If you guys want to try it out yourself, I'll put it into the chat window. Also, while Dean is out, I'd like to make just a quick announcement that next week, Dean will not be joining us for a weekly webinar. However, we're going to do another webinar that'll have to do with just some tips and techniques, especially when working with Android, and in particular, trapping the Android back button. There'll also be a Q&A session along with that. And then coming up later in the month, when Dean returns, or even before he returns, there's another session. Excellent. There's another. I was just explaining that we're going to be doing a couple interesting things this month. We're going to be doing a session with Chris Martin next week, who will be pointing out some Android tips and tricks for development. And also we have a very interesting showcase piece from the people at Goodman, the people who make the air conditioners and stuff, are big alpha clients, and he's actually going to show off the application that he built to make the distributorships run more smoothly. So welcome back, Dan. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Go ahead and switch that out.
And I'm ready to go.
And you should see a dialogue box.
Gotcha. Meanwhile, while Dave was talking, I went ahead and pasted in some very, very nice little links that go to our fabulous, amazing documentation system. A little bit, control bar actions, data controls. The most important one, if you're ready to take the next step, I'd say start with these simple ones, kind of get feel for it, because they're all built and ready to go. But there's a second one that I'd like to go ahead and show you real quick that is on disclosures. So this is all about, what disclosures do, how to put them together. It's step by step, very handy, that's been put together. So it actually shows first adding a control bar and then adding a disclosure to a control bar, and it literally goes through step by step. So when you're ready to take that next step, do your own, roll your own disclosures essentially, then that link, the link is called data controls to control bar, or hooking data controls to control bar disclosures will be a great one for you to do. There's also using disclosures, and then the control bar JavaScript API, which gives you all the underlying little JavaScript that allows you to manipulate it. So like, for instance, when you want to close that wait message, how do you tell the control bar, hey, we're done, close that message? Because you don't want to necessarily have it sit up there a long time. You want to be able to put that little piece of JavaScript on, say, an AJAX callback, so that once it's called the server, done what it needs to do, bring it back, it goes from there. So that is our presentation. Again, go ahead and copy those out of your chat message, put them aside. I think you'll find they're very, very handy as you move forward from there. And with that, and thank you very much, Dave, for handling the search kind of piece. As you can see, the investment in the documentation system is really getting pushed hard. I mean, I want to give credit for Sarah and Dave. They're really driving this. We're finding not only is the documentation just like the raw JavaScript APIs and things like that, but more and more we're starting to see these step-by-step instructions that you can use to kind of flesh out your knowledge and not have to struggle with getting a command up there. And you're going to see more of this content come along and come online as we go through the year, and it will continue to improve. And we want your feedback. If there's things that are missing, things that you'd like, let us know. We're also working heavily, and really Dave and his team is working heavily, bring in all the old videos that are still valid, making sure they're in the system, and then also bringing in a lot of the webinar content we've been doing, so you can find everything in one-stop shopping kind of place from there. So with that, what I'd like to do is go ahead and send it back to Dave once again to open it up for questions, and let me know.
Great. Well, there are a bunch of questions.
Excellent.
So you had just mentioned, though, about closing the wait window with JavaScript, and someone asked that question as, how do you do that? So Maybe you could sort of point out the...
You know what? Yeah. Good one.
Did I catch you off
I
guard?
know. Hey, I know.
It's all right, it's all
I'm
right.
going to go to the control bar API documentation,
Okay, that's fine.
and then
We'll learn
actually,
together.
I should have been prepared for that. I'm gonna fall on my sword here. That person gets a beer. Yeah, whoever there
fair
is.
enough.
So, let's see. Disclosure object. Here's the disclosure object. On hide. So this fires when it hides. So what happens is when you hide a disclosure, you can actually tell it an on-hide event. So
Oh, okay, sure.
you can't. Let's see. Resize, refresh, populate. There it is. There it is. There it is. A5 control bar hide disclosure. And so that is the technique. So what you do is, and to show you how that kind of works, I'm going to open up my little thing here. Bear with me.
Great.
And remember, you know, it kind of covers the screen, so you can't actually have someone have like a button below it they can click. But let me go here to, okay. So I'll bring this, and I'm just going to show you. Let's pretend that I could put a magic button on here. Okay. And when this button is clicked, I'm going to run the following code. And then hide disclosure. Why did it pop up here? And I'll make sure I have that right. Okay, let me, I'm going to go back and look at my handy dandy. It's hide disclosure, and then animation is a Boolean true or false. So do you want it to animate? So I'm just going to go ahead and put in here false. But this could also be true. So the idea is you get a, use the get control to get a pointer to the control bar that the disclosure lives inside. Because remember, all this stuff lives inside this thing on the UX called control bar 1, _1. And so then once you have that pointer to that object, then you can give commands to that object to do things, to change the layout. And you'll see that in our previous discussions. We could change data elements. We could make the change, you know, for instance, the text can change. We can tell it to show a different layout, all those pieces there. So what you can do is you can use the term hide disclosure or the function hide disclosure. You can, if you don't want to, you can just go like this, but you could also put in like true, and what will happen is when it hides the disclosure, it will do it using an animation. So it looks a little slicker, and therefore the user gets a little bit nicer experience. So what you would do is take this information right here, copy that, and then emit that from, like, let's say you made an AJAX callback to the server, and then that server made the callback and then sent back after it was done. You could just include this in that JavaScript that is sent back from the AJAX callback, and that will hide any disclosures that were opened when the callback was called. So let's say you want to do synchronization or something like that. You would click the button, make the AJAX callback from that button, and that button would also open up the disclosure as we've shown already today, and then the function on the back end would then turn around and send this code back, is JavaScript code, and then the mobile platform would just say, oh, I'm going to run it. Oh, I got a pointer to the control bar object, and I've told it to close the disclosures, and it does, and then boom, everything looks good. And that's why, let's say that for whatever reason this command did not come back, that's where that auto close can happen, where at the very least they don't get stuck where their app is sitting there showing them a wait message forever. So that's how you would do it. So the command is hide disclosure. The documentation, you could notice it says A5, but this is just the pointer, is under the disclosure, the control bar API reference manual is these pieces here, and you can find more data from there.
Great. So before you move on from there, someone asked a very similar question, which is there a way to trigger the disclosure from a button on a list control?
Yes. What you can do is you have the show disclosure. So we have a command in here called show disclosure, and what you can do is you can tell it the name of the disclosure, the type, that tells it kind of how to display it, size, and other pieces here. So actually, if I go into, let's just go back into our control bar, and then if we go to our action right here, you'll notice I'm clicking Show Basic. That's a command, and I'll show you that in a minute. If I go to the JavaScript here, this object, Show Basic, this is the kind, so you can copy this code. So what this is doing is, they're doing a little bit more here, but they're basically using the show disclosures, and it's telling you which disclosure to use. So show disclosure is a built-in command. Excuse me. So on your button, you would do the same thing I did before. Get a pointer to the control bar, and then say show disclosure. But the trick is you need to pass it these settings, and that setting is which disclosure, where you want it showed, and everything else from there. And so to get the documentation on that, you can go to the show disclosure method, and you'll notice that basically you are saying show disclosure, and then you're passing in settings. And this settings here is a set of information saying which disclosure, how do you want it to be displayed, what's the side, do you want animation? If you do, what do I want to tweak, etc. Do we want to set it from there? So the way you would do it is you would put in that show disclosure in a button on the list control, and then you could on the fly build these settings to say show a different message based on which row was clicked or something along those lines. But check out the show disclosure method, and that should show you how to do that.
Excellent. Now, quite a few people over the last couple of sessions had talked about their wanting to use these control bars in web applications as opposed to just a desktop. I mean, as opposed to just a mobile application. And could you just do a simple example of that where it's...
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So I'm going to click New. I'm going to create a web component here. I'm going to create a UX here. And instead of picking any one of my normal web app frameworks, I'm going to click OK and create a blank one. Okay. So you'll notice in here I have a blank UX. So let's go ahead and say control bar, let's say web. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here to, and I want to insert. So one thing that's important is that we've always talked about the concept of panels. And you know, these are pre-built for me. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go to panels, and what I'm going to do is put in what's called a panel layout. Now, mainly we've been using navigators, which will only show one panel at a time or one set of content at a time. So I'm going to click panel layout. So now I have my panel layout, and notice that I put in that panel layout, it says left to right. What I want to do is actually change that from top to bottom. So I can kind of change the orientation of how I want my panels within here to be laid out. If I have a series of panels that's left to right, it's going to be one after the other in a kind of column setup. If I do top to bottom, it's going to be top and bottom, or it's going to be like stacked on top of each other. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a panel card, and I'll go insert after, and I'm going to put in another panel card. And I like to name these right out of the gate because I'll tell you it gets confusing later on. So I'm going to go panel card header. Okay, now I'm also going to go in here and go panel card body. And if I wanted to, I could even put in another panel card for the footer. Now what I want to do is in this panel card, so now I'm going to have this laid out. Now if I do a working preview, you're not going to see anything on the screen. So let's go ahead and just real quick, I'm just going to put a couple pieces of static text here. Header, and I'm going to go to the body here, put in a little piece of static text, and I'm going to call that body. I'm going to do working preview. So you'll notice I have a header section and a body. So this is my first panel card right here, my second. Now you'll notice my layout, it's going to by default just kind of move things so that they're all equally spaced. So in this case, I don't want the header to take up half of the size of the page. So what I'm going to do is go to here, and I'm going to go to the layout side, and I'm going to say make the header 20%, and I'm going to make the body 80%, although it would automatically do that 80%. So now when I do my working preview, you'll notice that my header now is starting to look like a true header or at the top of the page, and then my body takes up most of the information from there. So let's go into my header right here. Let's delete that text, and instead let's put in a control bar. So you'll notice I've selected my opening tag for PC header. I'm going into my other controls, the super powerful, like those are the superhero controls, control bar here. You'll notice it inserted a control bar here, and I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And you'll notice there's nothing in here. So you could basically build it from scratch. But often that's kind of a pain. So I'm going to go to the home page or the home tab. Down below you've got this load sample control bar. So I'm going to go ahead and click there. And you'll notice we have some cool like stuff here. So let's go ahead and do, let's do right align menu button header. Want da-da-da. So you'll see what it did is it added my items, added my actions. It even created a layout for me for layout top. Here's my menu here and menu layout here. You notice my menu, so I'm going to go ahead and click here. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to go to my working preview, and you'll notice that here's my header in here, and here's my menu right here. So you're starting to see, and so let's do a few adjustments here. I'm not seeing the right style, so I'm going to go into properties here, and I know why. It's got to be alpha, and I'm going to click OK. So what was going on here is I'm doing a project for someone else, so I have a custom, and it defaulted to that name for whatever reason. I have to go into my properties to say, please use the standard alpha style. So I'm going to click OK. Now if I do working preview, it's going to probably look a little nicer. And so now you notice it's kind of nice and clean, and I've got this nice looking little pop-out menu here. If I don't like that, I can go into my control bar here. So let's go ahead and go into my control bar. And I'm going to go ahead and first thing I want to do is I'm going to go to my items here. And so I'm going to go webinar, cool web app. I want to do one other thing too is I want to go ahead and go to my layout here. And you know my layout here, I've got the menu on the right. I kind of want to make it on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that here, and I'm going to add this here, menu here. Now I want to do one other kind of cool thing, and this is kind of a little bit more advanced. So let me go ahead and show you where we're at on this. Let me do the working preview. And you'll notice that it acts, I've set it so it pops out from the right. I have to go in and tell this menu to pop out to the left if I want it to come over here. But you can see then it will run any actions that are done on there and auto close itself here. But let's do something interesting. Let's go ahead, go into control bar. And one of the standard techniques we see is that I'm going to add a data item here, and I'm going to call that username, and let's call it John Doe. And I'm going to go ahead and create an item here, and I'm going to add a control bar item, and I'm going to call it HTML username. Now I could put in John Doe here, but that would be fixed forever. And if you go back a couple weeks, you'll see that the data control is cool because on the fly we can change it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, instead of putting in hard coding John Doe, I'm going to put in username. And in fact, I want to go here and make it a little nicer and go, hello, username. So now let's go to my control bar layout, my main menu, and in my after here, I want to put in that new username so that it shows the menu on the left in there. So now you'll see that we have, and you'll notice it's picking up that default value. So now let's go ahead and look at this. And now I can go here and do a working preview. Notice we've got our menu here, our title here, and our hello John Doe. So let's show you that what will probably happen is when the user logs in, we want to set what that is. So we can actually set that, through a button. So let's go ahead and just add a button here. And I know we're getting close, so good. We have a few more minutes here. So other controls, button, change user, and I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Text mode. I'm going to cheat. I've got this right here. Let's see, where is that? Let me show you what this is real quick. Okay. He gets. Okay, so we're getting a pointer to the control bar. You'll see that's kind of a common thing here. And we're going to go username. And let's go Jane Doe. Okay, let's say I think it's called username. Let's make sure that's right. Then my data element there is. It's called username. And remember, it's case sensitive. So now I'm going to save. I'm going to go ahead and do a working preview. So you'll notice that I've got my menu. I've got my little title in there. Here's my button right here. You'll notice when I clicked my button, it changed the username here. So we could even do something a little more interesting too, is that on this change user, I'm going to go ahead and copy this JavaScript out. I'm going to go to my server event, and I'm going to go e.javascript is equal to right here. Okay, so I kind of went fast there, so I'm going to take a step back, especially for people who are new. So what I'm doing is, when this, right now what happens is that I had to click that button here to change the user text. So now what I want to do is, when I go to the server side of event, when I load the dialog, I actually want to run that JavaScript and insert the name of the person. So I can create this on the fly after they've logged in. Maybe I've set it to a session variable or something along those lines. And then what I want to do is I run this little piece of JavaScript, and that's what this e.javascript is. It just says, hey, when you open up the dialog, or on the when you open up the UX control, go ahead and run this. So now when we do working preview, we should see it change immediately, if I've done it correctly, to Jane Doe. And this could be the username, it could be their department, anything you want to do. And now all the power of the control panel. In fact, let me go ahead and run this in Chrome so we can see what it looks like actually running in a browser. But as you can see, a control bar is a very powerful way to put onto a web app what we have, for instance, in terms of, sort of what we do for a tabbed UI kind of scenario. So give it a moment as it opens it up. And we're in a standard web browser with Chrome here. And so, sorry, too many things running on my machine. It takes a moment to compile. There we go. We're on the UX. And you'll see we've got our 80% up here. We've got the name that's been signed. We've got our menu. Notice it takes up the whole page, which is great for that. In fact, let's try and fix that if that's okay, and then I'll toss it back for any follow-up questions. I know I probably went a little long on this. I'm going to go into the control bar, and you'll notice that we have a layout here called menu layout. How do we define that? Oh, wait. It's menu here. Aha. Okay. So you'll notice in our control bar layout that we have this thing called a menu layout. So we've got our layout, and then inside that is menu, which consists of menu layout. So think of it as a nested, that our primary layout is this, and then we have this thing called menu, which points to menu layout, which actually has our items in the menu. So if we go over to items and we click on that menu item, you'll notice this is where we can modify the behaviors. So you'll notice here that the disclosure, so this is a kind of a disclosure. It's opening up a pop-up. You'll see the name is that, menu layout. The display type is outside after. So that is telling how it's going to appear on the screen. And this is where you can do, and whether it's animated, etc. So let's do outside before. And you'll notice that we have a whole bunch, it tells you a lot about how this works and how to set that up. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's see if I've guessed correctly. So I'll go ahead and do my working preview, and let's see if I guessed correctly. That's a little trial and error experimenting. Once you get it, you'll be good to go. So there we go. That's a little bit more what I wanted. So you'll see that by just changing this this item called menu, I can have it appear from the top, from the side, from the bottom, slide up anywhere you want it. It could even be a modal disclosure, whatever you want. So very, very powerful here. And so this could be my main thing so that I go to a different page in my item or navigate to a different UX kind of scenarios when I click on here. Or even this could be like a one page UX where you have different panels that you're showing. You'll notice in this PC body right here, we could actually show different content in this body based upon the action in there. So as you can see, you can use the control bar both in a mobile, but you could also simulate and put in modern Web 2.0 kind of web desktops. The way I did is I had a panel layout, I had a panel header area. That panel header I set to a certain specific amount of size, so a percentage of the total page height. I had then a body area where I could put everything else I need in there, and then I had a control panel, control bar in my header that then showed the menu, and in this case I put in a piece of data control that would show the person's name with a default value. And then I used either a button, but more importantly is in my server side event, I actually said, hey, grab the control bar, update it to be Jane Doe. And what I would do is the next step would be to change this so that instead of just hard coding this little piece of JavaScript here, what I would do is I would use XBasic to build this JavaScript and insert right here the actual name of the user and then any other parameters. So as you can see, you can create very flexible information, including notifications and other things to show and hide in that control bar. And in fact, if you guys don't mind, well, let me go ahead and do there, but I wanted to show you a demo in one more minute before we go. And I put together a video on how this is done, and I'll send it out to everybody a little later this week through Dave and the team at Alpha. So let me take a stop here since I've been rambling for about 10 minutes, and so make sure I've answered the question and people have a good feel for how you can use it for desktop web applications.
Excellent. Yeah, so far it looks... just a couple questions about changing the colors of the menu background, how you go about doing that.
Sure, I can show you real quick. There's two ways to do that. Okay. One is I can go to Properties, Style Name, and I could customize the style, colors, and fonts right here. So I could actually go, if you notice that I can actually go right in here and modify it. Now, the downside of that is that that will only work on this UX. So if you're going to have multiple UXs in there, this is for quick and dirty. If you only have one UX in your control, you can go in here and say the header background is a different color, etc. And all you have to do is go to the Properties, Customize Style and Colors. Now, the preferred method, because you're going to want to probably apply it, is you actually double-click here, click Edit Style, and create a copy of that style, the alpha style, locally, and then edit that style. Now, the reason you do that is then the next UX you create, you don't have to redo it. You just point it to that new style on your local style, and therefore you'll have consistency. If you do it with that other trick, it's just only good for this one UX. So highly recommend that you basically just go into the style name here, pick the style you want, say Edit Style. Since this is a system style, it's going to ask you to copy it to local. Global is that if you want to use it across multiple projects. But I'd say local, give it a name, blah, 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 copy. Use the same editing concept to change your color scheme, and then you are good to go. And then now, the next time you create another UX in this component, you just say, use that local style instead of the system style.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
That's a style builder in 1.5 minutes.
Well, wait a minute. We still have 60 seconds left. Oh, all right. So I've got a 60-second challenge for you. Let's see if you could do this one. A person wants to know how to filter a list by being able to type in some text at the top of a box and hit a search button.
Okay.
50 seconds.
Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Actually, let's see.
Do you want me to narrate while you...
List customers. Let's go.
He's putting together a list control right now, and he's using his connection string, which he has predefined as the data source. Looks like he's pulling from Northwinds and pulling some of the fields from the customer table.
Filter, no filter. I'm going to put in a search part. Let's go. Let's company name. And click OK. Okay, so it's going to build my list and my search container. So here's my list it built. Here's my search container. It's going to look ugly, but nobody said it had to look pretty.
No, that was not one of the requirements.
Yes.
I'll write it later.
Okay, so I can go alf key, search.
Oh, you have too many...
Oh man, let's see, let me just get this cleaned up real quick. List layout, let's go ahead and just take these things out. Oh, it's company name. That was code. Okay, so let's go try it again. It says I think I lost my time, but it's search company name. So I got to do company name. So I'm going to put in here and go Alfred's. Do I make it? Do I get the credit? Okay,
I think you should get credit. You did it in 2 minutes.
I think so here. Okay, so real quick, I need another 30 seconds to follow up on this. So what I did there was I created the list customers and I used the list genies. Let me go through that real quick. Put the name here, and then I used the list control genie, and then I added this thing called a search part. The cool thing about that is that it built me the fields and these buttons right here. Now, to be able to search here, I actually have to click search, and then it's going to trigger this little piece of JavaScript that says, in the list of customers, search the list and auto, and it does this. So what we can do is copy this now, and I could go to this text box, and now what I could do is on key up, I could insert that there, and so every time they press a key, it would fire off that search. Now that's going to be a little slower because, it's going to search on everything, but then you could create this, you don't have to actually hit the search button. And we don't have time, but the cool thing is you could add that as like a disclosure that slides down the search up top. You start typing in the stuff, it limits the list, you close the disclosure, it's there. So close, but not all the way there. But that's how you would do it, is go ahead and use the basic pre-built components and then use the on key up here, and I could paste this in. And let's go ahead and try it real quick. Let's see. Let's do one little last test if you don't mind. So now what's going to happen is that it's going to write the little JavaScript for me that's going to watch company names. So when I go B, you'll notice as I type in there, it's automatically doing the search for me. So I can go A and A. There you go.
Oh.
Pretty cool, huh? And I just reused everything Alpha did, so I didn't have to build it myself.
Nicely done. Great. Hey, Dan, thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone who participated today. We are actually a couple minutes over time. A copy of this will be found in a couple of days at videos.alphasoftware.com. If you have other questions or questions we didn't get to, but you'd like us to get to them, please send them into guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com. Thank you again for attending. We hope to see you at a future webinar. Keep in mind, next week we'll be working with the Android development and handling some of the challenges there. So I hope to see you at that webinar. Take care and goodbye.